Good to be in beautiful Beirut again. In a previous life, actually, I was the founder and general manager of Arab Advisors Group for 15 years. And now I'm enjoying early retirement with the GSMA. Basically, the GSMA, as explained before, it's the GSM Association that represents the mobile industry across the world. 800 mobile operators are members of the GSMA, in addition to 250 technology vendors. We're active in technology, regulation, advocacy. We're basically the trade association of the mobile industry across the world. I'm going to give a small presentation about the mobile industry in the region and basically with a global outlook as well. The overarching theme of the GSMA and the mobile platform is connecting everything, everyone and everything to a better future. لأنه basically it is the primary source of connecting people هلا. The mobile platform is the primary source for connection for most of the people on the face of the earth. And all new users, most new users of internet, most new users of connectivity are being connected through the mobile platform. This is a short slide on the GSMA. Established in 1987. We have 12 offices worldwide. I'm based out of Dubai, small team in Dubai. And basically, there are 7.5 billion mobile connections by our members and 800 mobile operators, as I said. And this is the trade association of the mobile industry in the world. The connections globally, across the world, there are connections and there are unique users. By 2014, there were 3.6 billion unique users of the mobile in the world and over 7 billion connections, 15 million direct jobs by the mobile platform, and of course, contribution to the public purse, government revenues, almost $500 billion annually of taxes paid by the mobile industry to the governments. And that's not counting the services and the economic activities enabled by the mobile platform, which generates a lot more of tax revenues. HIFIA projections, of course, for 2020, we're expecting revenues of $1.4 trillion by 2020 for the mobile sector. Still, with all the success of the mobile industry, with all the success of technology, لسه في العالم 2.5 billion people without access to mobile internet. There are 1.37 billion people without access to bank account. There are 1 billion plus people across the world without any form of formal identity. People without IDs or without passports, without any official documentation. In primarily, of course, emerging markets, close to 1 billion are still undocumented. The GSMA has many programs in cooperation with our members towards tackling the problems that still exist in the world. Lack of connectivity for almost 2 billion people, undocumentation and unbanking. They revolve around certain programs that we have, the Network 220, about affordability of the network services, allowing coverage to extend to remote areas. One very interesting statistic, basically coverage in a certain country, let's say, is 90% of the population. Expanding coverage to another 1% costs as much as expanding coverage to the first 20%. So the incremental increase in coverage in mobile networks is very, very expensive, and that's why we have programs to basically make sure that there are certain economies of scale, infrastructure sharing, regulatory changes that expand coverage to the people still uncovered, which of course will lead to enabling more connectivity for the people, the unconnected people yet. Mobile money, of course, focuses on expanding the digital inclusion and the financial inclusion of the underprivileged through the mobile platform, and connected living and mobile connect, basically enabling the mobile platform to be the entryway to e-commerce services and for many people through their mobile device. Mobile money already available to 1.9 billion people globally. The yellow color is the Middle East and North Africa. And of course, Sub-Saharan Africa was the premier region in launching mobile money services. East Asia, of course, and India, South Asia are booming as well. Basically, in the MENA region, mobile money, 37.9 million registered accounts and 8.5 million active accounts with mobile money. Mobile money enabled by the platform basically allows people to transfer money, to have some savings, wallet, regular banking services without needing a physical banking branch. Basically, mobile money agents, if you notice, compares the reach of the mobile platform. So mobile money agents, 2.26 million agents across the world, ATM machines, 1.4 million, commercial bank branches, 500,000, and post offices, 500,000, and Western Union agent branches, also 500,000. So this just shows why the mobile platform and why the cellular operators, when they introduce mobile money, it would be a major change for the underbanked and the unbanked segments of the populations. Basically, the digital economy is underpinned by the mobile. The deployments of 3G, 4G, 5G is being finalized now. And all of the OTT services, all of the digital services really wouldn't exist without the presence of mobile internet and mobile platform. You can't have Uber, you can't have WhatsApp, you can't have all the services that you take for granted without the infrastructure that the mobile industry presents and facilitates. And it's a whole different market now. In the 90s, when the mobile sector was introduced, when governments licensed cellular operators, it was very straightforward. We give you a piece of spectrum, you pay a license fee, you put a network in, and as a mobile operator, you control all of the relationship. Basically, all mobile services or all services enabled by the mobile network was owned by the network licensee. Fast forward 20 years, it's a completely different situation. We have smartphones. The smartphones use Android or iPhone, or minority still use BlackBerry and what have you. And then they download applications, OTT players, and there has been fragmentation basically. Now it's a completely digital ecosystem where the mobile operators do not really have control over the services. They provide the connectivity, but then users have the choice to use whatever OTT services they have. So there has been decoupling from the infrastructure layer to the services layer. And that, of course, requires a complete rethinking of the regulatory framework and the taxation framework for the industry. An example, messaging. 10 years ago, the dominant player in messaging would be the regular mobile operator. You could not send messaging or SMSs or any message except through your mobile operator and except through payment to that mobile operator, where the government will get a revenue share and the government will get income taxes. Nowadays, the dominant player in the Arab world of messaging is actually none of the mobile operators. So it's the dominant messaging service is WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. So this explains how the industry has radically changed. And that's why we think that policymakers should take a fresh look at traditional rules and discard old regulation and basically have regulation for the new digital age and the new digital economy. And that's a key pillar of the GSMA's advocacy work, which is regulatory modernization. And that would also include, of course, lowering taxes and revising spectrum license fees to make sure that the mobile broadband platform stays with enough incentives for investments to basically be the foundation for the digital economy that it is already. How do we sustain the major growth in the mobile sector that underpins the digital economy, as we said? We need harmonized spectrum. Basically, why was GSM successful? Because you could get your handset working in Lebanon at 900 megahertz. You could go to Jordan, it will still work at 900 megahertz. And you could go to Europe, it's the same frequency. You could go to North America and so on. If you remember, in the early 90s, a handset that worked in Europe would not work in the US. And a handset that worked in Japan would not work in Europe. So basically, the industry needs harmonized spectrum available globally, because that would allow the vendors to produce network equipment harmonized as well. And the economies of scale would kick in. And with that economies of scale, you'll have the ability to invest profitably in the networks, with the fact that it is no longer as profitable as it was when the mobile industry started. Wow, perfect, thank you. And also, what do we mean by ex post and ex ante? Most of the regulation now on the mobile industry is ex ante, which means the regulations of what you can do and what you cannot do happen when you get the license. You're prescribed what services you can offer, and if you need to change them, if you need to be flexible, you'll have to get approvals on that. With ex post, what's important is competition. Operators work in a competitive market, and the government's role would be to fight anti-competitive behavior when it happens, rather than prescribe regulations before any of the services are delivered. And of course, I mentioned that in many markets, when it's very competitive, when there are 5 operators or 6 operators, sometimes it makes sense to merge. And what happens usually is that in many countries, governments preclude that merger from happening, or set up roadblocks in front of that mergers, which reduces the potential for economies of scale and better services for the consumers. .4G, مبروك صحيح عندكم صار 4G في لبنان. When was it launched in Lebanon? 3 or 4 months ago, right? Yeah. بس بيروت لهلا صح? Yeah, apparently just in Beirut now. But basically, it's 4G is perfect service, perfect example of what the mobile industry can do. And this slide shows the spectrum that was used for 4G services. 51% of 4G networks بالعالم have used reformed 2G and 3G services. And basically, the spectrum that was available for older GSM technology or older GPRS technology or older 3G technology was reformed and reused for 4G services. 22% were in the IMT extension 2.6 gigahertz, and 27% in the digital dividend 700, 800 megahertz. The digital dividend is a very interesting story. TV was analog, and it used those frequencies. When digital TV came along, many countries realized that actually you can switch analog TV to digital TV, and when you do that, you use a lot less spectrum, which gives you what they call the digital dividend. The digital dividend, which is spectrum in the 700, 800 megahertz space that you could reuse for mobile networks, and actually almost a third of 4G networks globally are using now spectrum that was for TV services 20 years ago. Now, with a bit of focus on the Arab world, we had 199 unique mobile users in the Arab states in 2014. We expect that number to increase to 233 million by 2020. Connections, 406 million cellular connections in the Arab states in 2014, expected to be 500 million by 2020. Contribution to GDP, 164 billion US dollars. That's the contribution of GDP, which is in the Arab states would amount to around 5% of GDP. And contribution to public purses, contribution basically to government revenue, 12.6 billion the mobile operators generated in government revenue for the Arab states, increasing to 14.3 billion by 2020. In Lebanon, the number is a little bit more than $1.2 billion that the cellular networks generate for the government. 1 million direct jobs in the mobile industry. What do we mean by direct jobs? Basically, people who are employed by the cellular operators, people who work in the supporting services, in the agent networks, distributors, and so on. A very interesting point, which is the number of smartphones. Smartphones, 117 million in 2014, expected to reach 327 million smartphones in the Arab world by 2020, which means 327 potential user of gaming, 327 potential user of Uber, potential user of mobile commerce, potential user of mobile banking, and so on. So it's actually a very massive opportunity for entrepreneurs in the Arab world, whereby Arabic-speaking smartphone users, over 300 million in 3 to 4 years, and they will consume content, they will consume digital content and mobile services, and it's really, regardless of whether there are customs and borders, it really is a one digital market in the Arab world. Okay, why Iraq and Lebanon in the same slide؟ لأني عندي وورلد بانك سيمبوزيوم على العراق بالموفمنت بيك، فجيت حطيتهم سلايد واحدة أريح راسي بصراحة. هلا which is which numbers are for Lebanon, which numbers are for Iraq? Really easy يعني. Lebanon on top, Iraq on the bottom, and basically the number of mobile connections, 4.4 million in Lebanon, of which 70% use mobile broadband. The population is 5.9 million. And the SIM penetration, which means the connections divided by the population, 74% in Lebanon. Okay. LTE is 4G. This is the number of 4G launches across the Arab world. بلبنان مثلا في 2 4G networks. الupcoming 0 لأنهم 2 operators. بالعراق في 1 network, 2 upcoming. بالأردن في 2 networks live 4G, a third one is upcoming. طبعا the Gulf states were the pioneers in rolling out 4G. They're helped by the fact that their consumers pay quite a bit. They're high ARPU, good return on investment, duopoly markets, and so on. But overall, it's a very good story. 4G is alive and kicking now in the Arab states. Okay. Smartphone penetration across the region. Of course, the UAE leads the pack in the Arab states. And this is my point on messaging. Most consumers now use IP-based messaging rather than regular network messaging. And this is the average revenue per user that the Arab states have. It has been quite stable and actually declined in 2013, 2014. The average revenue per user, what each operator collects on average from every user of the cellular phone. My time is up, and so are my slides. Here's my email address. Happy to share the slides with anybody of you. I'm on Twitter as Jawad Abbassi. I'm not allowed to take questions, but I'll be in the coffee break to take any questions that you might have. And thank you again for listening. Take care.